The training mat slammed against David Reed's back for the third time that morning. Above him, Grolnak extended a massive stone-textured hand to help him up. The gesture looked helpful. It felt like pity. "You need break, yes?" Grolnak's voice rumbled like grinding boulders. "Humans tire fast." "Is okay." David grabbed the offered hand and pulled himself upright. Around them, the combat training floor of Station Helios 7 buzzed with activity. 200 cadets from 47 different species practiced hand-to-hand techniques. The Chitauri moved with forearm precision. The Formians shifted their gelatinous bodies to absorb impacts. The Granitors stood unmoved like mountains. And then there were the humans. All 3 of them. "I'm fine," David said, rolling his shoulders. Again, Grolnak's rocky features arranged themselves into what might have been concern. Instructor MEV say humans need extra rest periods. Your bones break easy, your skin tears, again, David repeated. Vila clicked her mandibles for where she observed nearby. Her 4 arms crossed in a pattern that David had learned meant amusement. "Let the fragile one rest, Grolnak. Look at his face color." Humans turn red when systems failing. David felt the heat in his cheeks. Not from system failure. From anger he couldn't show. 3 months at the academy had taught him that much. Show anger, and they worried about human emotional instability. Show frustration, and they pitted human mental fragility. Show anything except grateful acceptance of their concern, and the lectures began about human psychological delicacy. "I'm red because I'm warm," David explained for the 100th time. "Human thermoregulation works through skin leaking water. Yes, yes." Vila's translator made her clicking sound dismissive. "Very primitive. Very fragile system." Instructor MEV's voice cut across the training floor. "Cadets read, Grolnak, Vila, report for scenario briefing." The Thalarian instructor's long fingers tapped against his datapad. "Zero-gravity combat simulation begins in 20 minutes. David started toward the briefing area. Grolnak's heavy footsteps followed close behind, as if the Granitor expected David to collapse at any moment. The briefing room held their entire squad plus Polis, the Formian whose body looked like someone had poured intelligent jelly into a vaguely humanoid shape. Polis could survive hard vacuum, could restructure their organs at will, could literally ooze through spaces smaller than David's fist. Instructor MEV pulled up the simulation parameters. Standard boarding scenario. Hostile vessel. Mixed gravity environments. Duration, 40 minutes. David studied the layout. Tight corridors. Multiple access points. Perfect for Cadet Reed. MEV interrupted his analysis. "You will observe from the control room." The words hit harder than Grolnak's training throws. "Sir, zero-gravity environments pose significant risk to human physiology. Inner ear disruption, pressure changes, bone density issues during prolonged exposure. The Academy cannot risk." "I trained in zero-G on Earth," David said carefully. "Before selection, I have certification for Earth training standards are not galactic standards." MEV's tone allowed no argument. "The simulation may involve rapid pressure changes. Your species lacks the redundant respiratory systems that allow safe participation. Please proceed to observation." David's jaw tightened. Around him, his squad mates wouldn't meet his eyes. Grolnak shifted uncomfortably. Vila's mandibles clicked in what might have been sympathy. Polis rippled in a way that meant awkwardness. "Understood, sir," David said. He spent the next 40 minutes watching through reinforced glass as his squad moved through the simulation. Watching Grolnak absorb impacts that would have shattered human bones. Watching Vila manipulate 4 weapons simultaneously. Watching Polis slide through gaps and reform on the other side. Watching them do the job he trained for. After, in the communal eating area, David sat with the other 2 humans. Sarah worked communications. Richard trained as a navigator. Both wore the same expression David saw in his mirror each morning. The look of someone trying not to drown in compassion. "They modified our physical training again," Sarah said quietly. "Lighter weights. Shorter distances. For our safety. Medical called me in yesterday," Richard added. "Wanted to run more tests." They still can't believe humans can survive the Academy environment. Keep checking for cellular damage. David pushed his food around his plate. The Academy fed him perfectly balanced nutrition calculated for human needs. They monitored his sleep to ensure proper rest cycles. They adjusted temperature in his quarters to match Earth standard. They did everything possible to keep their fragile human cadets safe and comfortable. Everything except let them be soldiers. Earth's gravity is higher than 80% of homeworlds here, David said. Not for the first time. Our atmospheric pressure would crush most species here. We evolved dodging predators that could tear us apart. Our own planet tried to kill us for millions of years. They know, Sarah said. They just think it makes us brave, not capable. Richard nodded. Heard two instructors talking. They admire humans for trying despite our obvious limitations. Like we're inspirational or something. David thought about Earth, about oceans that could swallow ships whole, about storms that could level cities, about deserts that killed the unprepared and mountains that didn't care about determination. He thought about the humans who crossed those deserts, climbed those mountains, and sailed those oceans anyway. Then he thought about sitting in observation rooms while others fought. We keep trying, David said finally. Eventually they'll see. But 3 months of trying hadn't changed anything. The Academy's compassion felt like chains. That night, David lay in his quarters running through combat drills in his mind. Outside, Station Helios, 7 orbited peacefully. Tomorrow would bring more modified training, more concerned instructors, more careful monitoring of the fragile humans that he didn't know that tomorrow the station would burn, that pirates would breach the hull, that everything the Academy believed about human fragility would shatter like bone under pressure. He didn't know that in less than 20 hours, he would show them what fragile really meant. David closed his eyes and slept, his body recovering with the efficient ruthlessness of species that learn to heal fast or die young. Outside, the stars wheeled in silence, uncaring and cold as they had always been. The explosion tore through Section 12 during breakfast that David's fork clattered against his tray as the entire station shuddered. Emergency lights flashed red. The calm morning dissolved into chaos as alarms screamed warnings in 17 different languages. Hull breach Section 12. All personnel evacuate to designated safe zones. This is not a drill. Hull breach section. The announcement cut off mid-sentence. Then gunfire echoed through the corridors. Grolnak stood so fast his chair cracked against the floor. What happening? David was already moving toward the exit. Training overrode thought. His mind cataloged details automatically. The explosion came from the docking sector. The gunfire meant attackers already inside. The cut transmission meant communication arrays damaged or seized. Vila's 4 arms grabbed weapons from the emergency lockers. Scarvan pirates. Has to be. They raided Outpost Deneb last month. The Scarvan were known for 2 things: brutality and slave-taking. Evacuation route beta, David said, pulling up the station schematic in his mind. Command will route cadets to the reinforced training sections. They ran. The corridors filled with panicked cadets from a dozen species. Some flew. Some crawled. Some moved in ways David's brain couldn't quite process. Behind them, the sounds of combat grew closer to Grolnak's heavy footsteps thundered beside David. You keep up good. For human. David didn't waste breath on a response. His heart hammered, but his breathing stayed controlled. Earth's higher oxygen content meant his blood carried more fuel. One advantage they never seemed to count. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with Polis, who was reforming from a ventilation grate. Main route blocked. Polis bubbled. Scarvan control, Junction 7. Cutting off cadet evacuation. Alternative. Vila clicked urgently. Through the maintenance levels, David said. Longer route, but a sound stopped him. Crying. Young crying. The kind that came from first-year cadets who barely knew which way was up in 0G. The sound came from behind a collapsed wall section. Metal twisted where an explosion had torn through structural supports. Beyond the wreckage, David could see small shapes huddled together. Maybe a dozen young cadets trapped behind debris. Grolnak approached the collapsed section and gripped the largest piece. The Granitor's muscles strained. The metal groaned but didn't budge. Fused, Grolnak said. Heat welded to frame. Cannot move. Vila examined it with two hands while her other two kept weapons ready. Too hot still. Can't get grip. Even for me. David stepped closer. The metal still radiated heat in visible waves. A coolant pipe had burst during the explosion, flash heating everything nearby. The metal would burn anything that touched it. Behind the debris, a small voice called out, "Please help. Please." David looked at his squad. At Grolnak, who could shrug off impacts that would pulverize humans. At Vila, whose exoskeleton could handle extreme temperatures. At Polis, who could literally reform damaged body parts. Then he looked at the trapped cadets that he tore a strip from his uniform sleeve. Then another, wrapped them around his hands in quick, efficient movements. David? No, Grolnak rumbled. Too hot for... David grabbed the metal. Pain screamed up his nerves. The makeshift protection bought him seconds, nothing more. He could feel the fabric burning through. Could smell it. The metal seared his palms, but he locked his grip and pulled. David, stop. Vila's voice seemed far away. Your hands, the metal shifted. Not much. An inch. 2 inches that David's jaw clenched so hard he felt his teeth grind. His hand screamed. His brain screamed. Every nerve begged him to let go. He pulled harder. The fabric burned away completely. Direct contact now. His skin blistered. The pain went beyond description. Went beyond anything the Academy's simulations prepared him for. But Earth had prepared him. Earth, where his ancestors walked on broken legs to reach safety. Where they dug through rubble with bleeding hands to save others. Where they learned that pain was just information, and information could be ignored. The gap widened. 6 inches. 8. Enough. David forced through gritted teeth. Get them through. Polis squeezed through first, body compressing impossibly. Then helped pull the young cadets out one by one. A small Thalarian. 2 Formian younglings. A Chitauri barely old enough for Academy enrollment. David held the gap open. Counted them. 11. 12. 13. But his hands were ruined. He could see that without looking. Could feel the damage. 3rd degree burns minimum. Probably worse. The last cadet squeezed through and Vila physically pulled David back. The metal crashed down where he'd been standing. Grolnak stared at David's hands. Medical. Now. You need. Evacuation first, David said. His voice sounded steady. That surprised him. They moved again. David cradled his hands against his chest. The pain was immense. Overwhelming. His body wanted to shut down, go into shock, prioritize survival over consciousness that he ignored it. Moved with the group. Kept pace. How you still walking? Polis asked, genuine confusion rippling through their mass. Pain receptors should have triggered shutdown. Different biology, David managed. They were halfway to the evacuation point when the Scarvan found them. The corridor ahead filled with raiders. 8 of them, armed with plasma rifles that could burn through armor. The squad took cover behind support pillars. Grolnak positioned himself in front of the younger cadets. Vila's 4 arms brought up weapons in a defensive pattern. One of the Scarvan shouted something in a language David didn't know. The translation came through his comm piece. Drop weapons. Surrender. We take only slaves, not bodies. David looked at his ruined hands. Looked at the young cadets behind them. Looked at the raiders between them and safety. The Scarvan fired a warning shot. The plasma bolts scorched the wall beside Vila's head. We fight, we die, Polis stated. Too many of them. David's tactical mind ran calculations. 8 raiders. Superior position. Superior firepower. 13 young cadets to protect. 1 injured Granitor from earlier fighting. 4 squad members, one of whom had destroyed hands. The math didn't work. Couldn't work. Unless the lead Scarvan aimed at Grolnak. Center mass. Kill shot. David moved that he didn't think. Thinking was for people who had time. He launched himself from cover, grabbed a fallen cadet's dropped shock stick with his ruined hands, and closed the distance before pain could stop him. The Scarvan's eyes widened. Just for a moment. just long enough to show surprise that something so small, so fragile, so clearly injured would attack. That moment was enough. David struck. The shock stick connected. The Scarven dropped. Then plasma fire filled the corridor, and David's world turned to pain and burning light. The shot caught his left side. Glancing blow. Not direct. Direct would have killed him instantly. Glancing still felt like someone poured molten metal through his ribs. David hit the ground. Heard Vila screaming. Heard Grolnak roaring. Heard combat exploding around him. His body wanted to quit. Wanted to give up. Wanted to let the darkness take him away from the pain. But there were young cadets behind him, and raiders in front. David forced himself to his knees, then his feet, and kept fighting. The shock stick fell from David's burned hands. He swayed, but didn't fall. Couldn't fall. Not yet. Around him, the brief firefight ended. Grolnak had crushed 2 raiders against the wall. Vila's 4 arms had disabled 3 more with precision strikes. Polis had engulfed 1, suffocating the raider inside their gelatinous body. The remaining 2 had fled, but David shouldn't be standing. Everyone in the corridor knew it. Vila reached him first, all 4 arms hovering uncertainly. You need to lie down. Shock will kill you. Plasma burns cause system shutdown in most species. I'm fine, David lied. The words came out steady despite everything. He looked down at his left side. The uniform had melted into the wound. Blood seeped through. Not pouring. Not yet. But close. You are not fine, Grolnak rumbled. The Granitor's voice carried something David had never heard before. Fear. Your species cannot survive this. Your body too weak. 2. Can argue later, David interrupted. Need to move. More raiders coming. He started walking. Each step felt like knives in his side. The plasma burn had gone deep. Possibly organ damage. Definitely severe tissue destruction. His medical training cataloged the injury with detached precision while his body screamed. Behind him, Polis rippled with confusion. How are you mobile? Most species enter shock from pain alone. The plasma burn should have stopped your heart. David didn't answer. Didn't have words to explain what humans learned over millions of years of being prey. That pain was just signals. That signals could be acknowledged and ignored. That the body would keep moving until it physically couldn't, and sometimes even after that. They moved through damaged corridors. Emergency lighting flickered. Somewhere distant, explosions continued. The station shuddered periodically. One of the young cadets, the small Thalarian, stumbled. David caught her with his ruined hands before she fell. The touch sent fresh agony through his nerve endings. He lifted her anyway, settled her weight against his uninjured side. I can walk, she whispered. Faster this way, David said. They rounded another corner and found their path blocked. Not by raiders this time, by station damage. The corridor ahead had partially collapsed, exposed to space. Emergency force field flickering dangerously. Vila checked her scanner. Alternate route adds 15 minutes. Force field will fail before we get around. Grolnak approached the collapsed section. His carapace had cracked during the earlier fight. Cannot clear rubble. Structural integrity compromised. Whole section might collapse. David studied the situation. They were 3 levels below the primary evacuation point. The auxiliary communication array was 2 levels above them. If someone could reach it, boost the distress signal, help would arrive faster than if someone could climb through damaged sections. Through radiation leaks. Through temperature extremes. Through everything the station's failing systems could throw at them. He looked at his squad. Vila's exoskeleton was cracked. Environmental changes would kill her. Grolnak was injured. Polis could survive vacuum, but couldn't operate complex equipment. The young cadets wouldn't make it 10 meters. I'll go, David said. The silence that followed was complete. Then everyone spoke at once. Impossible, you're already dying, humans can't survive. Listen, David cut through the protests. His voice carried command he'd never used before. Coalition response is 40 minutes out. We boost the signal, they come faster. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe 20. That's the difference between survival and capture for everyone still trapped. You won't make it to the array, Vila said quietly. The radiation alone. Will give me cancer in 20 years if I'm unlucky, David finished. Can worry about that later. Right now, I'm the only option. Grolnak's stone features arranged into something painful to watch. This will kill you. Maybe, David acknowledged. But sitting here definitely kills all of you. Math is simple. He handed the young Thalarian to Vila. Looked at his squad. These aliens who spent 3 months treating him like fragile glass. Who modified his training. Who pitted his weakness. Get them to evacuation point, David said. Set up defensive position. Hold until help arrives. Then he noticed the bleeding. His side was soaking through now. He could feel consciousness trying to slip away. The body's way of protecting itself from trauma. In no time for that. David found a damaged power conduit. Sparked against the exposed wiring. Grabbed the live end with his ruined hands. The electricity arced through the metal, melted into his wound. He smelled burning flesh. His own. The wound cauterized. Sealed. The pain was indescribable, but the bleeding stopped. Vila made a sound David had never heard from a Chitauri. Horror mixed with disbelief. You burned yourself deliberately, needed to stop the bleeding, David explained. His voice remained steady. That seemed to disturb them more than anything else. Pain is just information. I can ignore information. He turned toward the damaged section before anyone could stop him. Before his body could override his determination. Before survival instinct could kick in. David, Polis called. Why do you do this? David paused. Looked back at the young cadets huddled together. At his squad who thought humans were brave for trying to spite their limitations. Because someone has to, he said simply. And I'm someone. He climbed. The first level was radiation hot. His dosimeter would be screaming if he was wearing one. He felt it like heat under his skin. Cells dying. DNA breaking. Cancer forming in real time. He kept climbing. The second level was exposed to space. The emergency field held, but barely. Temperature dropped to near absolute zero. His breath crystallized. His blood tried to freeze in his veins. He kept climbing. The third level was near the reactor core. Temperature spiked to over 400 degrees. His remaining skin blistered. His lungs burned with each breath. He kept climbing. Somewhere during the climb, his mind started to fragment. Pain became background noise. The body went into emergency mode. Adrenaline flooded his system. Endorphins tried to mask the damage. His pupils dilated. His heart rate increased to dangerous levels. Earth's final gift to her children. The ability to push beyond limits when survival demanded it. David reached the auxiliary communication array. Found it damaged. Sabotaged deliberately by raiders. He stared at it with eyes that didn't want to focus. Then he started repairs. His hands were ruined. Burned. Radiation poisoned. But they still moved. Still gripped tools. Still connected wires. Behind him, Polis emerged from a ventilation shaft. The Formian had followed. Let me help. Together they worked. Polis held pieces. David connected them. Minutes stretched. The station groaned around them. Why don't you stop? Polis asked. Just rest. Let the pain take you. No one would blame you. David's hands moved on autopilot. Connecting circuits. Bypassing damaged sections. Humans don't stop because it hurts. We stop when the job is done. But why? David thought about Earth. About ancestors who crossed continents with broken bones. Who sailed oceans into unknown waters. Who climbed mountains for no reason except to see the top. Who survived ice ages and plagues and predators and never, ever stopped trying. Every human alive, David said slowly, is descended from survivors. For people who refuse to quit. It's in our bones. In our blood. In every cell. The final connection clicked into place. The array hummed to life. The distress signal boosted. Transmitted. Reached out into the dark. Response came immediately. Coalition fleet acknowledging. ETA revised to 15 minutes. The job was done. David's body finally registered what he'd done to it. The radiation. The burns. The plasma wound. The climb through hell. His legs stopped working. He collapsed against the wall. Polis oozed closer. Can you make it back? David tried to stand. His body refused. The emergency reserves were empty. The adrenaline was fading. The pain was everything. No, he admitted. But that's okay. They'll get here in time now. Polis helped him start the journey back anyway. Made it halfway before David's consciousness finally gave up the fight. The last thing he heard was Polis calling for help, telling someone that the human had done the impossible and was finally letting himself die. The Coalition fleet arrived in 14 minutes and 37 seconds. David didn't know that. He was too busy being dead, or at least, that's what the medical scanner said. The medical team found him in the corridor where Polis had dragged his body. Unconscious, minimal vital signs, extensive radiation exposure, third-degree burns covering 40% of his body, plasma wound through vital organs, multiple system failures. The Thalaria medic, Voss, ran the scanner 3 times. Each time it suggested immediate cessation of treatment. The patient was non-viable. Resources should be allocated elsewhere. He's human, Polis explained from nearby. He climbed 3 levels through hell, fixed the communications array, saved everyone. Voss looked at the scanner readings again. Impossible. No species could survive these injuries. The radiation alone should have stopped neural function. And yet, Polis rippled toward David's still form. He did. They transported him to the medical bay anyway. Voss couldn't explain why. Protocol said to focus on savable patients. But something about the human's burned hands, still gripping a tool from the repairs, made him try. The surgery took 6 hours. Voss worked with a team of specialists who had never treated a human before. The anatomy was familiar enough. 2 lungs, 1 heart, standard bilateral symmetry, but the details were all wrong. His organs are redundant, the Chitauri surgeon noted. 2 kidneys when 1 would suffice. A backup digestive system. The liver regenerates. This is excessive engineering. Pain receptors are distributed differently, another medic added. They register damage, but don't trigger shutdown. It's like the body acknowledges injury, but refuses to stop functioning. Voss examined the plasma wound. It had burned through tissue that should have been immediately fatal. But the surrounding organs had shifted, compensated, kept working despite massive damage. His body is fighting us, Voss said. Fighting the injury, fighting death, fighting everything. They stabilized him. Barely. Put him in a medical pod designed for extreme trauma cases. The pod's AI ran continuous analysis, trying to predict survival probability. The number kept changing. 30%, 20, 15, then back up to 25, down to 10, up to 30. I've never seen survival probability fluctuate like this, the AI specialist said. It's like his body can't decide if it's dying or healing. Meanwhile, word spread through the station. The human who thought he was fragile, who they protected and pitted, who they gave modified training because they assumed he couldn't handle full intensity. The human had walked through hell with ruined hands and a plasma wound, completed a mission that saved 300 lives, and was too stubborn to die properly. Grolnak visited the medical bay, stood outside the pod for hours. His rocky features couldn't cry, but something in his posture spoke of grief and guilt. We thought we were protecting him. The Granitor rumbled to Vila, but maybe he was always stronger, and we just didn't know how to see it. Vila's 4 arms hung limply. He burned his own wound closed. Deliberately. I've seen Chitauri warriors who couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. The pain would be, he said pain, is just information, Polis interrupted, oozing into the medical bay. That he can ignore information. They stood together. The squad who thought their human needed protecting. Who learned too late what fragile really meant in the medical pod. David's vital signs continued their impossible dance. His body fought. Cells regenerated at a rate that made no sense. Organs repaired damage that should have been permanent. The radiation poisoning should have killed him. The burns should have killed him. The plasma wound definitely should have killed him. He lived anyway. On the second day, Voss made a discovery. He ran a genetic analysis, comparing human DNA to the galactic baseline. The results made him call a conference with every xenobiologist on the station. Humans evolved on a death world, Voss explained to the assembled scientists. We knew this, but we didn't understand what that meant. He displayed the analysis. Look at their genetic repair mechanisms. Triple redundancy. built-in cancer suppression, radiation resistance at the cellular level. Their DNA doesn't just repair itself. It has backup systems for the repair systems. A Formian scientist rippled forward. Why would evolution create such excessive protection? Because Earth kills anything that isn't excessive, Voss replied. Their sun bombards them with radiation. Their atmosphere is 21% oxygen, which is corrosive to most life. Their gravity crushes. Their predators hunt in packs. Their diseases mutate faster than most species' immune systems can track. He pulled up more data. Humans don't have the strongest bones, or the toughest hide, or the most efficient organs. But they have redundancy, adaptability, and something else. The brain scans appeared on screen. Their pain response doesn't trigger automatic shutdown. It triggers fight or flight hormones, adrenaline, endorphins, cortisol. Their bodies pump themselves full of combat drugs when injured, so they can keep fighting while dying, another scientist said quietly. Exactly, Voss confirmed. They're built to survive long enough to complete critical tasks, to protect offspring, to warn the tribe, to finish the hunt. Earth's evolution didn't create warriors. It created survivors who refused to accept that dying means stopping. The silence in the room carried weight. The cadet David Reed, Voss continued, suffered injuries that would kill most species instantly. But his body interpreted those injuries as threats requiring action. So it flooded itself with stimulants, shut down non-essential functions, rerouted resources, and kept moving until the threat was neutralized. The threat being the mission, someone said. The mission, Voss agreed, which his brain categorized as survival critical. So his body refused to die until it was complete. On the third day, David woke up. The medical staff didn't notice at first. His vital signs had been fluctuating so wildly that the monitors had learned to ignore most changes. But his eyes opened, focused, found the display showing station status, secure. Raiders captured or fled. All cadets accounted for. 0 deaths. David's lips moved. No sound came out. His throat was too damaged. But Voss, checking the morning readings, saw the movement. Rushed to the pod. Don't try to talk, the doctor said. You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your injuries. David's hand moved, lifted slightly, gave a weak thumbs up. Then his eyes closed again. Not unconscious, just resting. Conserving energy, Voss stared at the human in the pod, at the burned hands already showing signs of healing, at the plasma wound that was somehow impossibly beginning to close. You should be dead, Voss whispered. Every medical text says you should be dead. David's vital signs remained steady. His body continued its impossible work of healing. Outside the medical bay, Grolnak waited, and Vila, and Polis, and a growing crowd of cadets who had heard the stories, who had seen the security footage, who were learning that fragile didn't mean weak. Inside the bay, alarms started going off. Not warning alarms. Alert alarms. David's survival probability had just jumped to 70%. Then 80. Voss watched the numbers climb with disbelief. In 3 days, the human had gone from certain death to probable survival. His body was healing at a rate that violated every known medical principle. Impossible, Voss said again, but the monitors disagreed. The impossible was happening. The fragile human was refusing to break. And in the medical pod, David Reed slept. His body worked. His cells repaired. His organs compensated. Earthchild, doing what Earth's children had always done. Surviving when survival should be impossible. Healing when healing should be fantasy. Being human, which apparently meant being terrifyingly, impossibly alive. David woke fully on the 5th day. His first thought was that everything hurt. His second thought was that he was alive, which meant the mission had succeeded. His third thought was interrupted by Grolnak's face filling his vision. You live. The Granitor's voice boomed through the medical bay. Doctors say impossible, but you live anyway. Quiet, David croaked. His voice sounded like grinding rocks. Trying to rest. Vila appeared beside Grolnak, all 4 arms gesturing excitedly. 347 cadets survived because of early fleet arrival. 0 deaths. The young ones you saved are fine. You did it, David. You actually did it. Polis oozed up to the medical pod side. And you healed. Voss says your recovery is medically impossible. Says human biology doesn't make sense. Told you. David managed a weak smile. Humans are weird. The smile hurt. Everything hurt. But it was manageable pain. Information he could catalog and mostly ignore. Voss entered the bay, datapad in hand. The Thalarian doctor's long fingers tapped rapidly across the screen. Cadet Reed, you shouldn't be conscious yet. Your injury severity suggested 3 more weeks of, can I leave? David interrupted. Absolutely not. Your tissue regeneration is remarkable, but you still have severe, can I walk? Voss paused, ran a scan. His expression shifted from stern to confused. Technically, the structural damage has healed enough for basic mobility. But I cannot recommend, David sat up. The movement sent pain cascading through his nervous system. He acknowledged it, ignored it, swung his legs over the side of the pod. His squad rushed forward to help. He waved them off with hands that were scarred but functional. The burns had healed into patterns that looked like lightning frozen in flesh. You need to rest, Voss insisted. Human or not. My body requires movement, David said. He stood, swayed, steadied himself. Staying still makes humans weak. We heal better when active. That was partially true. Mostly he just hated medical pods that he took a step, then another. Each movement hurt, but the pain was distant. Manageable. His body had learned this particular suffering and adapted to it. Voss made a note on his pad. Remarkable. I need to document this. Human recovery protocols are clearly insufficient. I've been researching Earth medical literature. Did you know humans have performed surgery on themselves? Amputated their own limbs to escape traps? Given birth while running from predators? Heard stories, David said. He was walking now, slow circuits around the medical bay. His muscles remembered their purpose. It's not stories, Voss said. It's documented history. Your species has a pattern of refusing to accept physical limitations. I'm writing a paper. Reconsidering human fragility. Why delicate does not mean weak. David completed another lap. His breathing was steady. His heart rate elevated but controlled. What happened to the academy modifications? The lighter training, Grolnak shifted uncomfortably. Commandant called emergency meeting. All instructors reviewed security footage of you during attack. They watched you burn your hands moving debris, Vila added quietly. Watched you cauterize your own wound. Watched you climb through radiation that should have killed you. Then watch you heal from injuries that did kill most species, Polis finished. Everything changed. The medical bay doors opened. Commandant Strax entered, followed by Instructor MEV and several other senior staff. The Commandant was a Corval, a species known for tactical brilliance and rigid adherence to protocol. Strax stopped in front of David, studied him with compound eyes that missed nothing. Cadet Reed, Dr. Voss informed me you were conscious. I came to deliver news personally. David straightened despite the pain. Sir, the Academy's protocols regarding human cadets are being completely revised, Strax said. Effective immediately. No more modified training. No more protective restrictions. No more assumptions about human limitations. Sir, David said again, didn't trust himself with more words. We made an error, Strax continued. His mandibles clicked in a pattern that meant deep thought. We saw fragility and assumed weakness. We saw your species' vulnerability to injury and assumed inability to function through injury. We were wrong. Instructor MEV stepped forward. I apologize, Cadet Reed. I benched you during 0G training to protect you. But you didn't need protection. You needed the challenge. Earth gravity is 1.3 times galactic standard, Strax said. Earth atmospheric pressure exceeds safe limits for 60% of known species. Earth's evolutionary history is documented warfare against an environment actively hostile to complex life. We knew these facts. We failed to understand their implications. The Commandant's eyes fixed on David. You climbed through radiation, extreme temperatures, and physical trauma to complete a mission. Then you healed from injuries our medical database categorized as fatal. You have shown us that human fragility is not weakness. It is merely honesty about damage. You break, but you don't stop. David felt his squad watching him, felt the weight of senior staff attention, felt the Academy's perception shifting around him like tectonic plates rearranging. With respect, sir, David said carefully, I'm not special. Any human could have done what I did. That, Strax replied, is precisely what concerns us. If any human possesses your capacity for survival, we have been dramatically underutilizing your species. He pulled up a holographic display. The Coalition is expanding human recruitment. We're revising physical standards across all training facilities. And you, Cadet Reed, are being awarded the Coalition Star for Valor. David blinked. Sir, I just did what needed doing. Which is exactly what valor means, Strax said. The ceremony is scheduled for next week. Once you're fully recovered. I'm recovered now, sir. Voss made a strangled sound. You are absolutely not. Can I return to training? David asked Strax directly. The Commandant's mandibles arranged into what might have been approval. The doctor recommends 3 more weeks of recovery. Dr. Voss also said I shouldn't be walking, David pointed out. Yet here I am. A long pause. Then Strax's mandibles clicked in definite amusement. Very well. Report to training tomorrow. 0600. Full intensity. No modifications. Thank you, sir. After the officers left, David's squad surrounded him. You're actually going to train tomorrow? Vila asked. With those injuries? Injuries are healing, David said. Sitting around won't help. You're insane, Grolnak rumbled. But there was respect in his voice. Before, I thought you were brave but fragile. Now I think you might be scariest cadet in Academy. David laughed. It hurt his healing ribs, but he laughed anyway. I'm still the same person I was last week. No, Polis said quietly. We are different. We see different. Before we saw a human who needed protection. Now we see what human really is. Which is? David asked. Survivor, Polis replied. Built by Death World. Made to endure. Fragile like diamond is fragile. Can crack. Can break. But harder than almost anything else in universe. David looked at his scarred hands. At the burns that were healing into permanent marks. At the evidence of everything his body had survived. Humans break, he agreed. We just don't let breaking stop us. That night, David slept in his own quarters for the first time in 5 days. His body ached. His scars hurt. His healing wounds reminded him with every breath that he had pushed beyond normal limits. But he was alive. The cadets were safe. The mission was complete. Tomorrow he would train. Would push himself. Would show the Academy that humans didn't need protection. They needed challenges. Outside, word was spreading through the station. Through the fleet. Through coalition channels. The story of the fragile human who proved fragile didn't mean weak. Who survived the unsurvivable. Who kept fighting while dying. The story of what humans really were. And across the galaxy, recruitment offices began to notice something interesting. Humans were volunteering for the coalition in unprecedented numbers. Young and old. All of them carrying the same message that Earth children were ready to show the galaxy what Death World survivors could do. David closed his eyes and slept the deep sleep of someone who had earned their rest. 3 weeks later, David stood on the training mat where Grolnak had knocked him down months ago. The same mat. The same opponent. Everything different. You certain? Grolnak asked. His massive hands were raised, but hesitant. Doctor cleared you for training, but full combat seems. I'm certain, David said. Around them, the training floor had gone quiet. 200 cadets from 47 species watched. Watched the human who had become legend. Watched to see if the stories were true. Grolnak moved. Fast for his size. The strike would have connected 3 weeks ago. Would have sent David sprawling. David wasn't there anymore. He slipped the strike, moved inside Grolnak's guard, executed a throw that used the Granitor's mass against him. Grolnak hit the mat. The impact shook the floor. Silence. Then applause. Not polite Academy applause. Real respect. Grolnak stood, his rocky features arranged into surprise. You're faster. Stronger. How? I'm not stronger, David corrected. I'm just not holding back anymore. That was true. For 3 months, he'd moderated his training. accepted the limitations others put on him, tried not to make the other species uncomfortable with human capabilities. Now he trained like Earth had trained him. Full effort. No apologies. Instructor MEV approached with a datapad. Cadet Reed, your physical assessment scores have improved 40% across all metrics. No, sir, David said respectfully. They haven't improved. They're just accurate now. MEV's features shifted. Understanding. You were sandbagging. The whole time. You told me to rest more. Train lighter. Take breaks. So I did. David met the instructor's eyes. I thought you knew best. Turns out I just needed permission to try. The training session continued. David sparred with Vila, her forearms moving in complex patterns. He held his own, worked with Polis on tactical scenarios, match pace with cadets who'd previously left him behind. His scars showed through the training uniform. Lightning patterns on his hands. The plasma burn on his side. Visible reminders of what he'd survived. Other cadets stare at those scars. Not with pity anymore. With something else. During a break, a young Chitauri approached nervously. Cadet Reed? Can I ask a question? Sure. The pain. When you burned your hands, climbed through radiation, kept fighting with plasma wound. How did you endure? David considered. Around him, dozens of cadets had stopped their own training to listen. Pain is just information, David said. My body telling me about damage. But information doesn't control me. I control the response. But the survival instinct that Chitauri pressed. Your body should have forced shutdown. Should have made you stop. Human bodies don't work that way, David explained. We evolved being chased by predators that could tear us apart. Running wasn't optional. So our bodies learned to push through damage. To keep moving until we reached safety. Then we could collapse. A Formian student rippled forward. But you collapsed before reaching safety. In the corridor. Because the mission was complete, David said simply. The signal was boosted. Help was coming. My brain categorized the threat as neutralized. So my body finally let me rest. Vila clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. You're saying humans have voluntary override of survival instinct. Not exactly voluntary, David said. More like prioritized. If my brain decides something is more important than my immediate survival, my body will execute that priority, even if it kills me. The silence that followed carried weight. That's terrifying, someone said quietly. That's human, David replied. Later, in the combat simulation room, David ran the zero-gravity scenario he'd been benched from 3 weeks ago. The same scenario. Full difficulty. No modifications that he completed it in record time. Commandant Strax reviewed the results with barely concealed satisfaction. Your tactical decisions are sound. Your combat efficiency exceeds expectations. You adapt well to changing conditions. Thank you, sir. You also ignored a direct order to retreat when the simulation indicated overwhelming force. David paused. Sir, the simulation had civilians in the target zone. Retreating would have been the tactically sound choice, Strax interrupted. But you stayed. Fought against impossible odds. Protected the simulated civilians. Yes, sir. Why? David thought about Earth. About the humans who ran into burning buildings. Who stood between danger and the innocent. Who chose to be heroes because someone had to be. Because that's what humans do, sir. We don't abandon people. Even simulated people. Even when the math says we can't win. Strax's mandibles clicked rapidly. I'm beginning to understand why Coalition Command is excited about human recruitment. You don't fight logically. You fight stubbornly. Is that a problem, sir? On the contrary, Strax pulled up a display showing galactic conflict zones. Logic can be predicted, countered, exploited. But stubbornness? Refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat is certain? That's considerably harder to fight against. The ceremony happened on a clear station day. 300 cadets assembled. Coalition officers attended. Even a few Admiralty representatives showed up. David stood at attention while Commandant Strax presented the Coalition Star for valor. The medal was heavy, felt strange against his chest. Cadet David Reed, Strax announced formally, for actions demonstrating exceptional courage, resilience, and dedication to protecting others. for completing a critical mission despite catastrophic injury, for proving that strength comes not from avoiding damage, but from refusing to let damage stop you. Applause filled the chamber. David stood still, thought about the young cadets he'd pulled from debris, about the signal he'd boosted, about the 300 lives that continued because he'd refused to quit. After the ceremony, his squad found him. "You look uncomfortable," Grolnak observed. "I am," David admitted. "Don't like being center of attention." "Too bad." Vila clicked with amusement. "You're famous now. The human who walked through hell. Every cadet here knows your name." "Great," David muttered. "That won't be awkward at all." Polis rippled closer. "There's something you should know. Academy's getting more human cadets. 20 arriving next month. 50 more after that. Coalition is recruiting heavily on Earth." David felt something shift in his chest. Relief. He wouldn't be the only human anymore. Wouldn't carry the entire weight of species representation. "That's good," he said. "They'll do well here. They'll have it easier than you did," Grolnak said, "because you already proved what humans can do. No one will underestimate them." David thought about that, about the cadets who would arrive to find a system already changed, who would train at full intensity from day one, who wouldn't have to fight for the right to be challenged. "They'll still have to prove themselves individually," David said. "But yeah, it'll be different." That night, he found himself back on the observation deck, the same spot where he'd stood 3 months ago, frustrated and angry at being benched, at being treated as fragile. Now he stood with scars that would never fully fade, with knowledge of exactly how much damage his body could take, with the certainty that fragile didn't mean weak. Sarah and Richard joined him, the other human cadets. Both had completed their own training modifications. Both had their own stories of pushing past perceived limitations. "Heard 20 more humans are coming," Sarah said. 50 after that," Richard added. "Think they'll be ready?" Sarah asked. David considered. Thought about Earth, about the planet that killed anything weak, about the humans who survived anyway, who crossed oceans and climbed mountains and walked on broken legs because stopping wasn't an option. "They're human," David said finally. "They'll be ready. They just might not know it yet." Below them, the station continued its orbit. Inside, cadets from 47 species trained together, learned together, prepared to protect the coalition and its citizens. And now they trained with a new understanding, that the small species from the high-gravity world wasn't weak, wasn't fragile in the way they'd thought. Humans were fragile like diamond was fragile. Could crack, could break under enough pressure, but try breaking diamond. Try shattering the hardest natural substance in the universe. Try making a human quit when they've decided not to. David touched his scarred hands, felt the raised tissue, the permanent reminder of the day he'd shown the galaxy what Earth's children could endure. "You think they'll write about this?" Richard asked. "About humans joining the coalition?" "Probably," David said, "but they'll get it wrong." "How so?" David smiled. "They'll say we're tough, strong, unbreakable. But that's not it." "Then what is it?" Sarah asked. David looked out at the stars, at the infinite dark that humans had looked at for millennia, that they'd dreamed of reaching, that they'd finally conquered through sheer, stubborn determination. "We're not unbreakable," he said quietly. "We break constantly. We just don't let breaking stop us. That's the difference." The stars wheeled in silence, cold and distant and uncaring. And on Station Helios 7, humanity's children stood watching them, scarred and stubborn and absolutely refusing to quit. The galaxy was learning what that meant. Point one human at a time, point one impossible survival at a time, point one lesson at a time. That fragile didn't mean weak. That IT men honest about the breaking and brave enough to continue anyway. The end.